should be live. Good morning.
Are we on?
We should be.
All right. I'm Carl Mingers. This is Aaron Burns. We are WRME Live.
We are live.
And it is live, and it's cold and wet outside.
Yes, it is.
Man, I tell you what, new buildings coming along. Had some. I've been so busy this week, it's crazy.
Yes.
I mean, I have a stack of stuff on my desk I've got to get done. And if you don't stay after deals, they just go away. So, got to focus on stuff. And everything in real estate, I'm not going to say everything's been tougher. It's just people have been tougher last year as far as making money decisions and stuff like that.
Yes.
I think we've got a big shift in a majority of the market's thinking. Where interest rates still aren't where we need them to be. We need them to be, I don't see us getting to 2%, 2.5% back again in a long, long time, if ever. But if we can get down in the 5% range, people can afford to buy a house. And we're lucky to live in a market where the cost of living is extremely low compared to even Texas, south of us.
Yes.
Some of the, I can imagine, New England area, all that stuff. I know I've had a lot of exposure to Florida the last few months. Holy cow. How can anybody afford to live there, that doesn't live on a boat? I don't know.
Or in a tiny apartment. And even those we saw in some areas are
and apartments
crazy.
are going up everywhere because I guess that's where so many people are having to, if they're going to move out of mom and dad's house, they're going to have to move into an apartment. Or, unfortunately, a little rat hole rent house somewhere.
Well, even apartments aren't cheap. Even apartments aren't cheap.
Oh, yeah,
So,
I know.
mean,
It is crazy. But, you don't have to have $20,000 down to get into an apartment. That's what's killing everything.
but even a deposit and first and last month's rent or whatever they're
That's
charging
tough.
is
You
tough
say-
for some people.
I think the average rent in Mustang's like $1,600 now. By the time you first and last month and deposit,
And then utility deposits and everything else.
You can easily be out $5,000.
Yeah.
Plus the cost of getting the U-Haul or the pizza you got to buy for all your buddies to help you move your stuff, if you have any stuff. And I can see where 18 to 26-year-olds stay home longer now than they used to.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was out of the house, I've worked full time, seems like forever, but, I was out of the house and married at 19, and that's just the way things were.
Right.
And, we didn't have a whole lot, but, and I still think there's a big stigma with young people. They want the same house their mom and dad has. Their mom and dad have been working for 30 years to get that thing.
Well, and it's the same as these kids come out and they're like, well, I expect this pay that people that don't realize that the people that are in that position now didn't start out making that kind of money.
Yep.
They worked up to that kind of money. So, yes, they might be making that now and that, but that's not what they started at. Same with the houses, the cars, the stuff they have. They didn't start out with that. They worked up to those houses. They worked up to those vehicles. They worked up to that. So,
to make $40,000 a year, you got to make $20 an hour. And work a 40-hour week. Still around here, that's very doable.
mm-hmm.
We was at Panda Express the other day, and only 2 employees there, working themselves silly.
Right.
Only 2 employees. But, everybody's all excited about Chick-fil-A. but Chick-fil-A pays $2 an hour better than Panda Express next door. And when you're in that labor force, $2 an hour is huge.
Right.
You know, and they wonder why everybody went over there. You know, you're already working fast service. You know.
But you're a high school kid, they're working with your
Oh, yeah.
schedule. You're a college kid, they're working with your schedule. You're semi-retired and they're
Mhm.
working with your schedule, or whatever it may be. You're you're a single parent, or you have kids in school and you just need a part-time job to work around your kid's school
Mhm.
schedule. Whatever it may be, jobs like that are wonderful.
One of the wealthiest young ladies I know, not really wealthy, she graduated with my oldest daughter, went to work at Walmart. Been there, almost 20 years. You know, between stock options and all the other little things that they get by being consistent and being there all the time, working their way up through the system.
Mm-hmm.
And she's still just as nice and normal as whatever you would ever think. But yeah, she's worth pretty good chunk of money. But a lot of people don't understand the consistency, like in real estate.
Right.
To be good at real estate, you got to be consistent and you got to do it for a long time. Okay, these people that go in and sell 50 houses their first year, that's an anomaly. And
Believe me, it doesn't happen.
yeah, I know a gal right now. She sold 52 houses her first year.
I wish.
Well, it cost her husband almost $250,000 for her to sell those 52 houses. They made money, but how many people can go in and throw that
No.
kind of money at a business? Just another challenge of being in any business, really.
Right.
A plan without funding is not a plan. Try to explain that to most new agents. I don't know if they really get it,
But don't get me wrong, you can do this with very little money to get started. You just got to work it and
But
be smart.
you can't get up at noon, go
No.
to the 1 o'clock matinee, and then expect stuff to happen.
And you can do it around a part-time job or a full-time job. You just got to be dedicated and have someone you're willing to work with and willing to work with you and split commissions.
And learn. And plan on that first 6 months being an extreme learning experience.
And then once you got to start making money, you got to learn and understand you got to spend money to make more money.
I like agents that focus. They figure out one thing and they start focusing on it like crazy because they know it inside and out. When I started in real estate, the market was bust. 2008. I started in 2009. And I started in short sales because that's all I could really get. But I went and learned everything I could possibly learn about short sales. And that's pretty much where we built our original business on. So.
But you got to learn to adapt and understand that might not carry you through the whole thing. So you got to learn other stuff too, or learn something new once that's not hot and heavy anymore.
Anybody that interacts with the office and with the other agents is going to learn little tidbits here and there all along the way. If they go to good continuing ed, just sitting there with other agents from other brokerages talking about things,
right?
You learn so much stuff. Hey, that's a good idea. I'm going to steal that. I'm going to add that to my repertoire. But I see a big slowdown in the amount of agents coming in right now. I mean, the last 6 months there has been anyway. The last couple of years we've had kind of, up until last year, we had 2 years where everything was gravy train, just easy,
But don't get me wrong, you were working your butt off even though it was easy to get buyers and sellers. You were working your butt off.
If you're a good agent, you're going to work, and you're going to follow that contract from start to finish. Did you ever hear from that one agent on the contract on that house that we sent over that they never responded?
No, never heard a word. Not from my text, not from the email, not from
and
anything.
That is unacceptable in this business. Talked to a developer last night. We're looking at 1 million square foot of dirt.
That's
A
just
million
crazy.
square feet. Okay, actually 1,023,000. And he goes, of course he thanked me for knowing the area so well because I've been working that area quite a bit.
Right.
But he goes, you returned my call twice. You've returned my emails within a day. Generally, I return within hours. And he goes, every other commercial person that he has dealt with has not returned any calls.
Commercial is a whole nother ballgame.
Yeah, but and you gotta, you can't assume that just because they're in the commercial world, the buyers, that you can treat them any less personal than you do on.
No.
When it comes to contract time, sure, the title company and the lawyers a lot of times are taking care of most of the stuff. But still, there's another person, a decision maker on the other side that wants to know that
Yes.
you know they exist.
What's going
Okay?
on?
Yeah. And that you're taking care of business for them.
And you're still involved, and you still know what's going on between the title company and the attorneys, and you can still answer questions, or if you don't know, you can get
See, most business owners,
the information.
they're busy. They don't have time to chase all these loose ends. And that's why they rely on you.
That's why we're
saying,
getting
okay,
paid.
you're the professional. I'll stay out of your way. If you need something from me, call me. Otherwise, let's just get this to the goal line.
Right.
That is the way they want. And I wish more residential homes were like that. And some are. But there's so much more emotion involved in residential
There
transactions.
is. And sometimes it's a lot of emotion.
Good emotions and bad.
Yes.
It can be trying, but it's also one of the funnest things I've ever done.
And sometimes we're therapists, and we're, counselors, and we're mediators, and we're everything in between.
Yeah, and we're, the more houses we do, we get to be pretty good estimators. Somebody sends us over a TRR for thousands of dollars. Like, okay, I got a guy who can do that for $250, $300.
Right.
Just. We don't wig out over
And
some
we
of this
can
stuff.
look at something and go, there's no reason we need a licensed professional to do that. That's just crazy. I mean, come on.
Well, a lot of people, and like if we have a listing and we know there's issues with the house, we prepare them.
Oh,
Say,
yeah.
okay, this is going to come up on the TRR. We can either fix it now, or we can fix it later, but it's going to affect the price up front.
Right. Especially if we're looking at a VA or FHA or any of those, and we know it's going to hit that could cause it to not meet minimum loan requirements. Let's get that fixed now.
Yeah, especially if it's overly cosmetic, like a bad spot on the roof. People will just drive by the house and not even look at it, even though it may be fit
paint.
everything they want on the inside. And we know it's going to be fixed. It's going, because like a VA, they're going to have a new roof, period. But, we might as well file the insurance claim and get this thing in the works. That way we can list it and say, hey, new roof, class 4, whatever, we did.
Right. And there's sometimes I'll be like, this may or may not be hit on the appraisal and have to be repaired, but it will probably hit on the inspection, so be prepared for that.
Yeah, and some things come up on a TRR that aren't necessarily FHA or VA
Right.
compliant.
And those are all negotiable then.
Right. But, if it's on the FHA or VA deal, got to fix it. That's just the way that it is. And you're kind of stuck with that for 6 months. So if you want to take your house off the market for 6 months, that's a whole nother deal. But most people, when they're ready to sell their house, they're ready to sell their house.
Yes.
They're ready to move to the next stage in their life. And hopefully, as things shift around in this country over the next 6 months or a year, a lot of people will be moving to the next stage in their life. It'd be exciting.
Yes.
All right, what else we got today?
Not a lot. We still have the 2 warehouses here for sale, our current
Yep,
offices.
these are for sale or lease, either way.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So, because we're, like we said, working on our new place. So, anyone interested, holler at us. And since Facebook is changing where lives only stay on for 30 days, we have our YouTube. And we're normally always live there. At the same time we're live here unless we're out and about, which might be changed. We might start going live on
Yeah,
YouTube.
because I'm going to be out and about next week.
And just paste it or share the link like I just did on our last one here.
Comment on them. Let us know
So-
what you think.
We're going to have to figure that out. So we'll let you know how we're going to change that up. But just FYI, you can always find us on the YouTube.
All right, you ready to wrap it up?
Ready?
Okay, we're Main Edge Real Estate, where we do real life, real world real estate.